Good morning, WickerShirians. Welcome to the WickerShire project, off-grid and unleashed. Oh, have I got a story for you. So as you guys know, we went $2,700 in debt to get our truck repaired. And now on top of that, we have mechanical failure within the vehicle the next day. Let's get into that. Something goes wrong, as things always do. Tick, 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 tick. Yes, we have got our truck back. Sharon drove it home to the property, and everything was working fine. The next day, I tried to start the vehicle up, and the battery was dead. I brought out the battery charger and proceeded to boost charge it, hoping that it would hold a charge, which it sort of did. I figured if I ran the motor for a little while, I'd get that surface charge and everything would be good. I had plans to go down to visit John. We have some smoked sausage inside the refrigerator. You know a good sauce when you bite into it, it's got that snap. But this is greasy, smoky goodness, and I had to share it. I made this big decision to come down here in Tennessee and do this lifestyle off-grid. And is it fair to them? Absolutely not. If anything was to happen to me, this would shut down. I make it a point every day to teach Sharon, Nathan, and Bella how the system works, how to fix it. But that's not always going to be the case. I happen to be mechanically inclined, and it's easier for me to do things than them. So I get that surface charge going on the battery. The truck barely starts up. I leave it running for about 5-10 minutes, and then drive down to John's place. We have a wonderful breakfast together of sausage, potatoes, and eggs. John, being a military engineer, he's got experience working in the battery business for like 10, 15, 20 years. Forget what he said. But he knows his business when it comes to batteries, especially the lead acid ones. And he sat me down and tried to explain it to my thick skull. And as you guys know, as information comes in here, stuff is forced out there. And he was explaining how amp hour charge works in a battery, which for a lot of people, they don't get. Admit it, Billy. No, you don't understand it fully. So I was learning. The good thing about that is you have to always learn. You have to admit that you need to know something. After breakfast, we exited the vehicle. I went to go say my farewells to John as I had things to do back at my property. Went outside, tried to start the truck. No go. Battery's dead. We test the alternator, and that's pushing out 8.1 volts. The working alternator for my GMC would push out around 14.5 volts. So a 12 volt battery, 14.5, we have higher voltage, thus the amps can flow through into a lower voltage battery. Basic charging. My battery's not being charged. I get my intelligent battery charger. He digs through his van and he pulls out a dumb charger. So now we got smart versus dumb, right? You'd think smart always wins. It's the dumb charger. John's dumb charger doesn't know when to stop charging. It will just push amps in. My intelligent charger will reach a certain voltage for a certain amount of time. After about 20 minutes to a half hour, it shuts off, thus providing only 10 amp hours into an 80 amp battery, which means I'm losing 70 amp hours. Luckily, I parked my truck within 6 feet of his van, and I saw his generator on the back, and I thought, oh, those got the 12 volt connector, and we can throw 8 amps into my battery. And with the generator running, I should be able to, that's not going to work. You're going to need 400 to 800 cold cranking amps to start a truck up, and maybe if I got another surface charge, I could get it home and worry about it then. Something goes wrong, as things always do. My complete instrument cluster is out. There are no lights. The windows don't go down or up. The truck has lost complete power. It being a 12 volt system, I learned from John that I guess the ECU must read 12 volts or higher, somewhere around that, in order to function and work and light everything up. And us being below that voltage, yeah, truck was going anywhere. I run home and get my booster pack. We've got all these devices hooked up and stuff, and he's telling me, your charger, my charger, you know, it's just not going to work. And I'm thinking, well, yeah, I'm going to push in 15 amps. You're going to push in 10 amps. And he's saying it's kind of not how it works, even though it might seem, he goes, you're overthinking. It might seem like that seems right. And in my head, yeah, it does seem right. When I hooked up my charger to his dropped, which means mine dropped. Something about the electronics, the way it works. So they were basically balancing out and fighting each other, and I'm going to assume he's right because he knows a lot more than I do, so I disconnect mine. Tick, 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 tick. And I'm saying, maybe it's my starter. He's like, no, it's not your starter. And then luckily, I get the truck started, and I drive it back, and we drop it off here. Pop the hood open. John shows up in his van. He's concerned about us. We begin to diagnose the engine compartment, and it breaks down to my battery is damaged. My alternator is also not functioning. So after testing the battery and testing the alternator, I have an idea. Going inside the house, and the 12-volt battery we use for running our indoor shower, I bring that battery that I had out, which is a lower class battery, not so many cold cranking amps, about 450. We swap out those batteries. The battery I have from the Subaru is a post style. It's got the positive and negative lead post sticking straight up and out. And, John pulls apart the wires. He shows me how to change the connections on it. He's like, I'm going to teach you something here. And he gets it so that the battery terminal has an open hole where we can fit that over the post screws and screw that down. I got my positive on. Now the negative won't reach over. About 6 inches short. John's like, do you get any wires around? I've got some 2-watt cable inside. Bring the 2-watt cable. We start cutting. And I remembered I have 2 6-volt batteries. Well, how would I connect those? Yeah, there's got to be a 2-watt connector in between the two. Why waste time? We got one here. Now there's another problem. He goes, you get any nuts and bolts? I've lost a few nuts and bolts. I'm not sure. You got to look around the property. We go through searching through all my toolboxes, and I don't have any nuts and bolts here. He goes into his van and magically comes up with a magical nut and bolt. We wire that all in. Here we go with that negative connection. John MacGyvered this. Now having a fully charged battery that is fully functional, go in, start the truck up, no problem. That voltage was 12 and it slid down to 11. As the truck ran, I turned the heat on, or the AC, that dropped down to 8. My cluster went out completely, which means it was functioning and working. So it's not the cluster. Cluster works. I was in that house being a dad, you know, it's not working. We agree that it is the alternator. Look into my Cash App and I pull out a little bit of money that was donated. Thank you guys. You saved our life. And with that Cash App money, we combined it, went out, and we purchased a brand new alternator for $59. Thanks, Napa. On the drive over to said Napa, up at Waverly, John had placed the alternator on the stairwell. And he takes a turn, and it goes rolling, and I almost bust his plexiglass door. I ain't got money to repair that. Lean down at the stairwell, and I reach down slowly. And John asked me if I have a good footing, and I look at him, I say, yeah, I got a good footing. Go to reach for the alternator, and he steps on the brakes. Smash my head into his dash, and he's cracking up. Funny guy. Trying to knock some sense into me. Yeah, thanks, John. John has a bad sense of direction. It's one of his faults. I, on the other hand, have a fantastic sense of direction. I'm like a human compass. We're navigating through back roads and streets, pop out on the other side of the highway, and I say, see? Yeah, who needs an exit ramp? So when we left, I left my old battery on the charger for that hour, and I go to test it. It's at 10.2 volts, and once I take the charger off, it drops down to 9.8, and it's just not holding the charge. I got a dead cell in there. Problem is now is I don't have a 12-volt battery to run my 12-volt water pump system inside the house. Do you want the truck to run, or do you want your shower to work? I take the damaged battery, and I put it in, and it's crawling. It barely runs the shower. It's just, that's okay. Now we're water saving, even more than we were. I walked into the house, came back out a few minutes later, and John had already installed the alternator. That's the gas tank shocks. Frame's all welded in and fixed. Way up front there, that's the member they welded on. They sprayed this with rust stop. You can see the corrosion in the bar, so I might have to get that replaced somewhere down the road if it wears away. Because I'm very aware of spam and potential hijackers and scam artists and all that kind of thing, I'm a very tiny channel. I get a message on my phone from a very well-known company that deals in off-grid life, and I'm going to take them, if it happens, I'm taking them up on the offer. Monday I'm going to go call them to make sure that the offer is legit, because I could really use it. I'd like to thank you guys for watching the WickerShire Project Off-Grid. Like, subscribe, leave us a comment. In 48 hours I'll get back to you, and we'll catch you on the next one. Bye. Luckily, I parked my now, John being the military, John being a millipede, After our wonderful breakfast in his camper, we, after sitting down and having a wonderful breakfast in the, as you would, because why wouldn't you exit a vehicle? How else would you get outside? He gets out, I get out my Smart, and again, it's a Harbor Freight charger, so you guys get it. So I walk back down to the property, I go get my intelligent charge controller. And Sharon likes hers over easy, likes to break them on toasted bread. You know, to me that's kind of snotty. I'm not into that kind of thing. I think it's gross. I like my eggs fully cooked. Off-grid life isn't easy, and for those of you that are paying attention, I'm not wearing a white shirt anymore. It's blue. Something you should look in when I make these videos. Be able to tell how often I take a shower.